All right, so if you've ever really wondered what proteins are made of, like at the most basic level, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to build a really solid foundation in amino acid biochemistry. We're talking about the tiny, tiny molecules that are literally the building blocks of life itself. Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the absolute fundamentals, what these things even are. Then we'll get into how they behave and connect with each other. From there, we'll do something practical with that knowledge, and then we'll wrap up with a quick quiz to make sure it all stuck. First things first, before we go any further, let's get a crystal clear definition of what we're actually talking about when we say amino acid. So the most important thing to get is this dual nature they have. Every single standard amino acid has these two distinct parts. You've got this basic amino group on one side and an acidic carboxylic acid group on the other. It's kind of like they have a split personality, chemically speaking. And that's exactly what makes them the perfect versatile building blocks for every single protein in your body. Now, while that core structure is always the same, what makes each amino acid unique is its side chain. We just call it the R group. Think of it as the personality of the amino acid. And it's this R group that lets us sort them into two big families: nonpolar, which are kind of water-fearing, and polar, which are water-loving. Simple as that. All right, so we know what they look like. Now let's get into how they act. We're going to dive into some of their essential chemical properties, the stuff that makes amino acids so incredibly useful and versatile in biology. Okay, this next concept is super important, so listen up. Inside our bodies, at a normal physiological pH, amino acids aren't just neutral molecules. Nope, they exist as something called zwitterions. It's a German word that basically means hybrid ion, and it's a perfect name because the molecule is carrying both a positive charge and a negative charge, all at the same time. And this image here does a great job of showing how that charge totally depends on the environment. Just look at what happens when the pH changes. If you stick it in a really acidic solution, the amino acid grabs a proton and becomes positively charged. Put it in a basic solution, and it loses a proton, becoming negatively charged. And right there in the middle, around neutral pH, that's our zwitterion, with both charges perfectly balanced. And this leads us to a very specific pH value, kind of like a chemical sweet spot, called the isoelectric point, or Pi. This is the one pH where the positive and negative charges on that zwitterion cancel each other out perfectly. The molecule has a net charge of 0, and every amino acid has its own unique Pi. So you might be asking, how do we find that Pi? Well, we use these things called pKa values. They just tell us the pH where a group is likely to gain or lose a proton. And as you can see with this histidine example, it's actually pretty simple. You just find the two pKa values that are on either side of that neutral zwitterion form. Then you just average them. In this case, that's 9.6 and 6.0. You average them out, and boom, you get a Pi of 7.8. Okay, so we've got a handle on the individual bricks. Now let's see how they actually link together to build those massive structures we call proteins. This diagram shows the whole process perfectly. It's a special kind of reaction called a condensation reaction. You might also hear it called dehydration synthesis. The carboxyl group of one amino acid reacts with the amino group of another. As they join up, a molecule of water gets kicked out, and voila, you formed a super strong link called a peptide bond. Now, you might be tempted to skip past this, but don't. These features are absolutely crucial. Because this peptide bond has some double bond character, it can't just rotate freely. This creates a flat, rigid plane. I want you to think of it like a fixed hinge in a model. This rigidity is really the first rule that dictates how a long chain of these amino acids starts to fold up into its final functional three-dimensional shape. It all starts here. As you can see here, there are basically two ways this bond can be configured: trans or cis. In nature, the trans form is the one you see almost all the time, and the reason is pretty simple, really. It puts those big, bulky R groups on opposite sides of the bond. This just gives them more space, It minimizes crowding and makes for a much more stable structure. Chemists have a great term for this crowding: steric hindrance. Okay, let's switch gears a bit and do something practical. We're going to apply what we've learned to a problem you will definitely see again: calculating the molecular weight of a peptide chain. All right, here are the rules of the game. Now, for short peptides, you can just add up the specific weights for each amino acid one by one. But for big proteins, that's way too much work. So we use a handy shortcut: an average weight of about 110 daltons per amino acid. Now, that number already accounts for the water that's lost. But if you're calculating from scratch, you have to remember to subtract the weight of one water molecule, that's 18 daltons, for every single peptide bond that gets formed. Let's look at this great example here, a peptide made of 10 alanine units. So, first step, we take the molecular weight of a single alanine, which is 89, and we multiply it by 10. That gets us 890. Easy enough. But wait, we formed 9 peptide bonds to link those 10 alanines, right? So we have to subtract the weight of 9 water molecules. 890 minus 162. And that gives us our final answer, 728 Daltons. See? Not so bad. All right, you've been listening patiently. Now it's time for a little pop quiz to see what sunk in. I'm going to show you a couple of questions. Go ahead and pause the explainer, give it your best shot, and then we'll go over the answers together. Okay, here's the first one. I want you to think back to that shortcut rule we just talked about for calculating the weight of those really big proteins. And the correct answer is 11 kilodaltons. Since we're dealing with a large protein, we just use the average. It's a simple multiplication, 100 amino acids times that average weight of 110 daltons per amino acid. That gives you 11,000 daltons, or, you guessed it, 11 kd. And now for question number 2. Think way back to our chat about how pH affects the charge on an amino acid. What do we call its special state when it's sitting at a neutral pH, like 7? If you said zwitterion, you are absolutely right. At that neutral pH, it's carrying both a positive charge on its amino group and a negative charge on its carboxyl group. They're perfectly balanced, giving it a net charge of 0. So let's just do a quick recap of the most important stuff we covered. We learned that amino acids are the fundamental building blocks of proteins. We saw that their charge is totally dependent on pH, and they exist as these cool zwitterions. We know they link together with rigid, planar peptide bonds, and we now know how to calculate their molecular weight. Seriously, you've got the core fundamentals down now. And I'm going to leave you with one final thought to chew on. There are only about 22 standard amino acids that are used to build pretty much all proteins. Think about that. From this tiny alphabet, nature writes the entire complex language of life. What does that tell you about the incredible power of combination? Thanks so much for joining me.